I didn't expect anyone to be on this stretch of road. The highway, abandoned for miles in every direction, had that strange quality of existing just outside of time. It was dusk, though the light lingered in a way that made the edges of the world feel frayed, like it hadn't quite finished fading into night. My tires hummed against the asphalt, a low, constant vibration that seemed louder than it should, echoing off the metal guardrails that lined both sides. I'd been driving for hours, but it didn't feel like hours. It felt like I had stepped into some other version of evening, one where the clocks had stopped, or perhaps simply forgot to tick. The trees leaned in at odd angles, their shadows stretching unnaturally long across the road, sometimes flickering when the headlights passed over them. I told myself it was fatigue, maybe grief, that I was escaping something I couldn't name, though the truth was, I was chasing nothing but silence. The first barrier I noticed was subtle. Its paint was scratched, dented in the middle, as though something had brushed against it with quiet force. I slowed, squinting through the gloom. My own car felt heavy, tense, like a living thing anticipating a collision that had already happened somewhere else. I remember thinking, how odd that someone would have hit it and left it like this on a road so deserted. I eased past it and kept driving. The headlights flickered in the same rhythm as my pulse, illuminating the gray barrier that curved along the slope of the road. The air smelled faintly of asphalt and wet pine, and I could hear my own breathing in the cabin, too loud against the hum of tires. I felt a strange chill crawl over me. Not cold, exactly, but like the sensation you get when a memory surfaces out of nowhere, sharp and accusatory. Then it appeared. The next roadside barrier had dents shaped exactly like my car's front bumper. I slammed the brakes. The tires squealed, but no smoke, no skid, nothing to mark a sudden stop beyond the vibrations under my feet. My hands were trembling on the wheel. The dents were perfect. Every curve, every indentation mirrored my car's front with unsettling accuracy. I stepped out, flashlight trembling in my grip, and walked closer. The asphalt was clean, the air unmoving. No skid marks, no signs of impact. It was as if the barrier had been waiting for me to arrive. I backed away slowly, but something about the scene rooted me to the spot. I could feel my heartbeat echoing off the metal, the road stretching endlessly behind and ahead. The idea was absurd, yet I couldn't shake it. The road knows me. It remembers me. I climbed back in, hands gripping the wheel like it could anchor me to reason, and drove on. Every barrier afterward bore the same mark, each one dented in perfect likeness of my car's front bumper. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. Maybe exhaustion, maybe stress. But the further I drove, the more precise the impressions became, identical down to the microscopic scratches, as though some invisible hand had pressed an exact mold into the steel just before I reached it. The air grew colder, though the sky was still a bruised orange fading into purple. The hum of the tires against the asphalt became a rhythm in my skull. The headlights flickered as I passed each dented barrier, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw my own face reflected in the metal. Not in the mirrors, not in the glass, but in the cold, silent steel of the road's barriers. I began to notice patterns. Each dented barrier appeared at intervals corresponding not just to the road's curves, but to my own movements, slight hesitations, slight accelerations. The road wasn't random. It was following me, mapping me, or perhaps predicting me. Every swerve, every gentle tap of the brakes, seemed accounted for in the pattern of dented metal lining the highway. I tried to break it. I accelerated sharply, hoping the pattern would fail, hoping that speed could disrupt the silent choreography. The tires screamed against the asphalt. The wind whistled through the open windows. But when I glanced ahead, the next barrier was already there, perfectly dented, waiting as though it had known exactly when I would arrive. I laughed, a hollow, dry sound that made my throat ache. It was ridiculous, impossible. Roads didn't think. Roads didn't remember. And yet, I took an exit, a small slip of asphalt veering off to the right, hoping to escape whatever this was. The map on my phone was useless. No signal, no landmarks, just the twisted line of road disappearing into darkness. And then I saw it again. A barrier, smaller this time, just beyond the turn, the dents, my car. Waiting. I pressed the accelerator, trying to pass it. The headlights cut across the metal. The dents glimmered, reflecting the faint orange of the sky and the purple of night mingling in the horizon. I tried to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. The barrier wasn't ahead or behind. It wasn't to the left or right. It was me, my path, my trajectory, condensed into steel. I realized then that the road didn't merely remember. It anticipated. It mirrored. It waited. Every choice I made, every hesitation, every escape route, it had already folded into its lines, its barriers, its quiet, silent memory of me. And as I drove, I understood the truth. I could never leave. The highway was no longer a road. It was a ledger of my presence. My car's dents, my movements, even the pattern of my breathing, were all etched into the silent, unblinking steel. Every turn I took, every barrier I passed, confirmed it. The road had seen me before I even arrived. The dusk gave way to a deeper purple, almost black, though the faint glow lingered in patches like a dying pulse. I could hear the faint thrum of tires against asphalt, matching the rhythm of my own heartbeat, though the night was otherwise empty. Ahead, the next barrier emerged from the shadows. I didn't need to check. I knew what shape it would bear, exactly like my car. I slowed, braced myself, and in that instant, I understood. I had not driven into a road. I had driven into myself. The hum of the tires, the silent reflection in the barriers, the chilling anticipation. Everything was mine, and yet nothing I could ever escape. The road would wait. It would remember. It would follow. I pressed the brake again, and it pressed back. I had been driving for hours, though I couldn't be sure how many. The highway stretched out like a ribbon of darkness, disappearing into a horizon that never seemed to arrive. My headlights carved thin slices of clarity into the black, illuminating the occasional reflective marker that blinked in the wet sheen of asphalt. The hum of the engine was constant, a low vibration beneath my seat that felt more intimate than mechanical. I told myself I was tired, that I just needed to keep moving, but there was another part of me, a jittering, unnamed part, that whispered, "Why are you still out here?" I passed a curve, the kind that promises nothing more than an empty turn into darkness, and then I saw them. A pair of taillights hovered above the road, unconnected to any vehicle. I froze, foot hovering over the brake. The lights were perfectly still, a steady, unnatural red that pulsed just enough to make my eyes ache. No engine hum, no tires, no reflection of a car beneath them. Just the lights, suspended in the night like a pair of unblinking eyes. I blinked and rubbed my forehead. Maybe I was hallucinating. Fatigue, grief, stress. They all converge at some point in the night. My chest tightened, but curiosity, or something darker, pushed me forward. I accelerated, the tires whirring against wet asphalt, and the taillights stayed where they were, unmoving, mocking my movement. I tried to pass them. I pressed harder on the accelerator, my headlights piercing the darkness ahead, and still, the red lights remained above the road, perfectly aligned with my perspective, as if the air itself had sculpted them. When I glanced into the rearview mirror, they were there too, again suspended in midair, following me, mirrored in every reflection, though there was no car to cast them. My pulse picked up, a drum in my ears, and I gripped the steering wheel like it could anchor me to reality. Minutes or hours passed. Couldn't tell. Every time I thought I had lost them, a reflective sign flickered in the headlights, and there they were again. Not moving, not blinking, just floating, red and impossible, above the asphalt. The stretch of highway seemed endless, but at the same time, it felt intimate, like a trap. Every mile I drove felt familiar, but wrong. I passed the same mile marker twice, or maybe 3 times. My stomach churned. Déjà vu, I muttered aloud. It's just déjà vu. I tried to call someone, anyone, but my phone had no signal. The radio static crackled and hissed, responding to nothing but the white noise of isolation. I thought of turning back, retracing my route, but the road refused to let me leave. The signs repeated. The same reflective rectangles, the same curve, the same crack in the asphalt. My headlights illuminated the same shadowed tree at the edge of the road, again and again. The world had folded in on itself, compressing time and space, trapping me in a loop I couldn't comprehend. The taillights remained above me. I tried to pass them again, hugging the center line, swerving into the shoulder, but no matter what I did, I couldn't get past. They always stayed the same distance ahead, the same height, the same unyielding red. I swore I heard a faint hum. Not the engine, not the tires, but a vibration that seemed to come from the air itself. I started to notice details I hadn't before. The reflections in the mirrors weren't quite right. Sometimes they lagged. Sometimes they showed a stretch of road I hadn't yet reached or had already passed. Sometimes I thought I saw myself driving an older version of my car, or a shadow where no shadow should exist. My eyes ached from constantly scanning the mirrors, the road, the overgrown embankments. The world felt thin, like paper stretched over something vast and hidden. I slowed, trying to make sense of it all, and the taillights mirrored me perfectly. When I braked, they seemed to descend slightly, matching my deceleration, though there was nothing beneath them. I tried the opposite, accelerating, swerving, signaling. Nothing broke the connection. I couldn't outrun them. I couldn't understand them. Hours, or maybe seconds later, the lights flickered, just slightly, and the road itself seemed to shift. A sign I passed the first time now read backward. The lane markings undulated like the asphalt itself was breathing. I realized, with a mounting dread, that the lights were not ahead or above. They were always me, always reflecting my choices, my path, my hesitation. Every curve I had taken, every time I slowed, every panic-driven swerve had been noted and mirrored by those two unblinking red lights. Panic rose like bile in my throat. I pulled off into a rest area, though it was no larger than a shadow, and the lights followed, suspended in midair just beyond the line of trees. I killed the engine and sat in the dark, listening to the hum of tires I was no longer moving, listening to the quiet that wasn't quiet at all. The lights waited, patient, inexorable. I finally understood, in the same instant that the rest of the world seemed to sharpen around me. These lights weren't from another car. They weren't some trick of reflection. They were my own, the manifestation of my path, my mistakes, my guilt. They hovered because the road itself had remembered everything I had done, every choice, every small sin I had hoped to outrun. And it had decided to mark me, to follow me, to show me that you cannot escape what you carry. I put the car back in gear. The taillights descended closer to the asphalt as I moved, perfectly synchronized with my car's rhythm. They were no longer ahead or above. They were intertwined with me, a tether I could not sever. I tried to stop, to swerve, to abandon the road, but I realized the terrifying truth. The road was not a road anymore. It was a ledger, and I had written myself into it. The lights pulsed once more, steady, patient, and then, when I glanced in the rearview mirror, they were inside the car with me, reflected in the windshield, mirrored in every surface, waiting to remind me that some paths cannot be escaped. I had driven into the night hoping to outrun my mistakes, but the night was patient, infinite, and endlessly aware. The road had remembered, and it would never forget.